Hi, everybody. It's T. Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today, I'd like to finish up our discussion about what kinds of life activities fall between the green circle and the red circle, and why is that okay? Why could that be problematic? Just see where it all goes. Last time around, we talked pretty much about all the ones that are from upgrade all the way downgrade, going clockwise around there. So we understood some of the activities that are actually well positioned when they're up here in that somewhat upgrade area. I did decide to show a different layer so we could just superimpose the circles on top of the different roles someone might play, because I thought that might help us better understand what's going on the inside. And maybe, just to kind of put a spotlight on that, most of the work that we do, you guys know this by now, we're focusing on people that are upgrid, clockwise over to outgrid, continuing downgrid. We tend to talk about the outgrid hemisphere, if you will, where the in-grid, there's some stuff to talk about once in a while, but we don't often see change grids with heavy concentrations of activities being plotted here. Now, that should come as no surprise to us, because generally speaking, our clients are hiring us to help them deal with outgrid goals they're working on, or somewhat upgrid opportunities they're trying to seize, or problems they're trying to resolve if they're more upgrade. I mean, this is who hires us. This side, doesn't tend to get a lot of investment made for them, at least in the settings we would tend to find ourselves working in. For the people that are watching the video, if you are in any kind of a human development / helping profession, so if you're more serving the role as a therapist or a counselor of some sort, you may meet all sorts of people that are on this side of things, but people that are business consultants and that tend to focus more on the outgrid side of things. Do you guys agree with that? Is that your experience working with your clients? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually we're hired to help people get something done or take care of an issue.
People who are in grid get assigned to us, T.
They get assigned to us, yeah. And even then, the investment that's being made feels rather, I want to say, minimal, or one of those unavoidable things that the company needed to do. Yeah. But assigned to us, yep. Sometimes we end up with these people. And again, if I was working as a therapist or a counselor, my practice may be focused on the people that are more on the in-grid side of things, where we're trying to help them find a voice, take charge of their own life, overcome whatever limitations or obstacles they feel they represent. So, I get this side of things. We just don't often see it in the kind of work that we've routinely done over these years. And nevertheless, I like to complete things. And so let's take a look at these three remaining general areas. Now, why I wanted to show this background image was because I do think it can help us see what kinds of things might go there. Like last time around, we were talking about this area that's somewhat downgrade and somewhat outgrade, where you see the advocators kind of wedge there. We were talking about this is the person who's more formalizing things. So they're creating policies, procedures, routines. These things are being kind of built out as a asset that can be used moving forward. And the people who are asked to do that, because they're down in power apathy and maybe even touching upon apathy, don't really want to do it. But there they are, and it's on their plate. And last time around, we talked a lot about being in this little spot outside of that red circle, or darn close to it, where frustration and resentment start to become kind of the leading emotions of that ratio, if you will, of ability versus challenge. So I just thought the word might help, particularly on this side, because I don't know that we have a lot of examples we can come up with here. But here we go. So there may be times when we are called upon to help somebody to do something, to become a good supportive follower, even though that doesn't rise to the helper level of involvement, just be a good solid follower, supportive as we can be. Or maybe they're asking us to do something to handle the administrivia of whatever it is that's going on here. So I kind of like these words to help us kind of get more clarity about what's going on. So let's take a look at the helper. Well, what exactly is a helper? A helper would be defined as a follower who's got a bit more tension around what's going on. They're facing a greater challenge. They've been given something to do that actually requires them to rise to that occasion and get it done. So they're just not there as a follower to help. They're actively engaged in helping. Now, if we looked at the levels of tension for just a sec, let me scroll back to another little diagram I can show you. What happens? Could I do that? I certainly could. What happens if we take our precious little circles and overlay them on this particular layer? I think we can see a bit more of what's going on. So let me just grab these circles real quick, assuming it'll let me. What do I have to do? Ungroup, arrange, regroup. I don't need to regroup. I just need the circles, people. Give me the circles. Arrange. That's not grouping at all. I think this is very rude. Where'd my circles go? Okay, well, so be it. You guys will just have to envision it. But imagine, if you will, these circles superimposed on these levels of tension. And again, you're the gifted students. I can just go back to a composite and you should be able to see what we're looking at. So here's that gray wedge. That's the helper wedge. There's our circles. There's the levels of tension. Hopefully you guys are able to see through all these layers to see what's going on. Well, if I'm in this helper area, I know I'm in power stress for a good chunk of it. And I might even be up in stress a little bit. But again, intensity wise, these gray arcs going radiating from in-grid, out-grid, I've got kind of like a moderate level of intensity associated with me being at that helper kind of spot. I'm halfway between the amiable energy and the expressive energy. So I'm feeling something very powerful, but caring is what I'm really feeling. So I'm involved. I'm emotionally involved. I've got enough energy around it to prompt me to move forward on whatever's going on. But I don't necessarily have the expertise that whoever's running the show has. I don't know a whole lot, but I know enough that I think I can be helpful. Does that description resonate with you guys as I point to this area in the change grid? All y'all unmute and chime in. Makes me feel like I'm not on the radio.
Sure.
Yeah. So I get that. So what kinds of circumstances might we find ourselves in where someone asks us to do this, that we would need to move here to live life? Well, I can think of a lot of routine sorts of things we've all been asked to do, whether it's, help somebody, do a project around their house. They need another couple of hands to help them move something from wherever it is to wherever they want it to go. We get called upon by our neighbors on occasion to just to come and help. Well, when we come there to help, we're not expected to have tremendous ability, but how much ability do you need to have to do something that might be a 6? If I have an ability of a 6, I could be running the show, but less than that, I can still be helpful hands and do whatever it is that I can do. So I'm thinking it's that sorts of things, as opposed to the problem solving that would be happening further up grid, where now the keyword, which one did we choose for that upgrade spot? I know it's the energizer kind of type. That's really a very different level of motivation, a very different level of tension. But helper, there I am. I don't know that I'm actively going out there trying to, get people to let me help them. Is there such a thing as a pushy volunteer? Maybe there is. So, but that's what's happening in this particular area of the change grid. What are your thoughts about that? Anybody? Thoughts, comments? Nah.
There are definitely pushy volunteers.
There are definitely pushy volunteers. And keep in mind, for them, why would they be pushy volunteers? Let's go back to our composite diagram and see what energies might be there. So there's 6. I'm on the border in this particular little spot right there between a driven, amiable, and analytical expressive. So there's a driver element that's coming into play there. And certainly if I move down a little bit, and now I'm positioning myself more as a leader among followers, that's the one I wanted to really kind of get into with you guys just a second. So many layers. then I think what Linda is saying is even more true. So there are followers, and among the followers, there are going to be leaders among the followers. As we move further out grid, then the leader energy is going to be predominant, and there are going to be people that are still willing to be somewhat of a follower, even though the leader energy is there. So just position these things as being on a continuum. But I do believe they're inside of the red circle. If you're very far in grid, I don't really know that you are actively following anyone doing much of anything. And if you're this far out grid, then your leadership suddenly becomes way aggressive. You're no longer leading people as much as you're forcing them to do whatever it is that you want done. So, but at least inside the red circle, the spectrum between follower and leader is going to have to include varying ratios of the follower energy and the leader energy. So as I move out grid, follower gives way to a driven follower or a leader among followers. Go a little bit further, I hit a balanced place, equal follower, equal leader. Then I become more of a follower among the leaders, or a junior level leader, if you will, but ultimately I become the leader. And if I don't stop myself, I might end up getting in a danger zone. All right, does that continuum resonate with you guys? Yeah. So when Linda's talking about, yeah, go ahead. Okay, there are such a thing. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can indeed. How are you? How are you, Chris?
I know I got a lot of background.
Yeah, it's all right. Whatever you want to chime in, you feel free to chime in. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So my question is, so is this saying that there's no outward follower or a follower transitions into a leader?
Yeah, I
More
believe
outgrid they go, the
absolutely. Absolutely. I would say to you that as the follower energy or the moves further and further out grid, the leader energy is coming into play and getting stronger and stronger and stronger until the follower energy may be shed altogether. But right around here, inside of that green circle, if you will, it may very well be that that's where I'm perfectly willing to be a follower among the leaders. And if I look at the energy there, that's that amiable driver. And as we've said on other calls long ago, if we look at behaviors in the C-suite, this is where that chief operational sort of person might be. So there's a lot of mission critical but human sorts of things that need to be done. And so this individual with that um, follower among leaders energy may be very happy to not be involved making the big decisions that need to be done. They just want to be able to make the decisions about how the people that are involved are impacted or need to be mobilized, managing that resource.
So with the driven amiable, if they're more outgrid and that driven amiable, are they considered a leader amongst followers at that time versus a leader? Go ahead.
I would say to you only because the driver energy is primary. This is probably someone who is more in a management role, a leadership. I don't want to use that word, a management role, a director kind of a position, because you're absolutely right. If I just go into, we'll talk about HR for a second. If I walk into the HR department, I don't think everyone is going to be an amiable driver. But I think the person in charge of HR is probably going to be an amiable driver. And they might have a whole staff of driven amiables. That might be who they really, really want to have on their team. Because again, this is caring. And most of this, by the way, these four amiable drivers, expressive, these four are pretty much inside of that green circle. So these are very workable energies, but more gentle in their approach and impact than going to the next extreme in either direction. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah. So let's say I'm out there, I'm the driven driver. I'm trying to be that good leader. I'm not in the danger zone. I'm just here at 1010. I know how important the people are. but because I need to focus my energy more on the directing, the doing, all the things that that amiable driven driver energy is compelling me to do. It's great to have an amiable driver that I can rely upon to take care of the people. It's great that I can have an analytical driver to take care of all of the detailing sorts of stuff, keep track of whatever we need to keep track of, watch the money. And I also need an expressive driver who is there to rally the troops and paint the glorious vision and all that sort of stuff. But they're probably doing it more under my direction, guidance. Hopefully I have such faith in them as that amiable driven driver that I have really delegated the great deal to them, and said, because they know what they like to do. And one of the things I know they don't like to do is to try to be what it is that my role is in that particular situation. So yeah, anyway, it exists on a continuum because all of these energies are ultimately going to have their benefits. And unfortunately, it also means they're going to have their downfalls. So hopefully I've got some good people to choose from that I can build this organization with. Yeah, okay. So back to the follower energy. A pure follower is basically ready to do whatever it needs to be done, but they aren't all that ready because it's not all that much that needs to be done. Again, look at this. Coordinates 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. These are people who are saying, I don't have a lot of energy to perform that particular task, but I don't perceive that task as being all that challenging. And so can I do it? Sure. You want me to show up at a particular day at a particular time or ready to wave my sign or do the little march? I'm happy to do that. You need me to come over to the food, what do we call it? Food banks to help fill bags and pass out resources. Okay, well, I'm sure you got your own method of doing that. So I don't think it's all that challenging. I don't know how big my ability is overall, but as long as I got enough to meet the challenge, I'm happy to do it. Goes on. I keep giving you descriptions more of people that are helpers than followers, but how do I say this? A follower is not necessarily in action. You know, most of this follower piece is in power. So all those things you know about power are going to be ruling the day. So they're in an information gathering mode. They're trying to figure out whatever it is that can or needs to be done, but they're not exactly out there. Yeah, here we are. This is where we want to be. They're not really out there trying to push anything. So, but they're ready. Okay, I know I'm babbling, but hopefully you guys can feel that there at least should be some sort of subtle distinction between what the follower energy is all about, or the follower role, and what the helper role really is. Okay. And that leaves this last one down towards the bottom, the administrator. And again, we're looking at between the red and the green circle. So it's this little wedge that would be right here. What kinds of things are okay to plot there? When is this a good spot to help us live life? So when are we okay being in a situation of moderate ability and low challenge? You know, what kinds of things?
Tasks.
Yeah, tasks that are not of any requiring any great skill or whatever, but they got to be done. That's why I like that we chose that role label as administrator, because
Laundry,
yeah, well, this is laundry.
scrubbing the
Well, you
floors.
know what? For my wife, it's filling in her timesheets.
Yeah, timesheets have to be done. You know, it's this kind of stuff. I mean, I might even say taxes, although I don't think I want someone with only a perceived ability of 6 doing taxes. That I think we need a little bit further outgrid, even downgrade. I'd be happier with a true analytical, but at least this person can help me get the documents together. There's some, you know, early stage stuff I'm sure they could be fine in. And so there may be times in life that I'm asked to step into that administrative sort of a role. So how many of you have ever been involved in any kind of a social group and they need officers? And one of the officers is the treasurer, and you're thinking, well, I mean, it's not a big organization. How challenging can being a treasurer possibly be? And how much skill does this actually require? So fine, if no one
You
else
want to
is,
know?
what's that?
I have a lot of experience. Would you like to know?
Yeah, go right ahead, please. So,
Well, I spent 20 years as treasurer of Mahoning Lodge B'nai B'rith, and when I got the books, they hadn't been balanced in about 12 years.
Oh, wow.
man.
So I had to use my accounting skills to recreate at least the last year of transactions and get things up to speed.
Yeah.
And that was $300,000-400,000.
Yeah, well, and you're building a case for why you don't want these people with only moderate ability to really take the reins
Exactly.
when it
And then
comes
the
to something.
Storytelling Association of California, which I took over from somebody who knew what they were doing, but it was more complicated than I had anticipated
All right.
because of our festival and keeping track of every single line item.
Wow. And so maybe this is really an area more for like whoever's taking attendance. So we can, give credit where credit's due for the number of hours someone has put on something, where you're talking about, and I should have thought more about that financials are far more consequential
Oh
than
yeah.
than this is. Now, maybe this administrative task is making sure, to David's description, making sure everyone gets their timesheets turned in on time. It shouldn't be a difficult task, but I assume that there are certain people that are far more compliant than others. So, what do you think? Do you think attorneys are compliant or non-compliant by nature? What do you guys think? Do you think attorneys are more compliant or non-compliant by nature?
More compliant.
I'd say they know the rules and they know they have to obey the rules. They do want to get creative. So maybe if I said there's a big difference between corporate sorts of attorney activities versus criminal attorney kinds of things, where you might go like, no, getting someone off of a serious charge may require much more creativity. That is not an administrative kind of a task. Yeah, where other things might fall purely into this category, purely in this category. All right. So again, I don't think we encounter a lot on this side when we come to those three descriptions, but as long as you guys recognize that there is a place on the change grid for everything we ever need to do, bar none, I think we've got our understanding where it needs to be for life being lived between the green and the red circle.
Hey, T, what do you call when you're outside of the red circle but not in a danger zone?
Well, technically, I would even consider this to everything outside of the red circle would be a danger zone. It's just usually when we depict the danger zone, we just chop off the corner because we can. Yeah, maybe if I was going to just label it for distinction, I would say the danger zones as you know them are truly places of danger. Where these in between spots, maybe these are just very risky sorts of things, you know, like talking about this one that's upgrade. I'm in a situation where the challenge is a 12 and my ability is a 6. Well, this is where we schmooze and the charm comes on and all that stuff is happening. I can see how I could be in a very risky area because I don't want to come across as being, um, you know, charming but not really contributing anything. There's a risk I'm taking if I'm trying to operate from that particular point. Similarly, I think this is a risky spot because why should I put anyone in a situation where they view their ability as a 12 and the challenge is only a 6, knowing fully well they're going to feel that that task is beneath them, but I don't have anyone else, I'm going to make them do it. I think that's a risky choice because while I might get the task done, what am I doing to this relationship? What am I doing to this person? So danger, not so much, but still a risky kind of a place. And by the way, the reason why I made the red circle inside of the change grid itself, the square, is because we've always said that there are a lot of people out there that think that they're 12s and we think they're zeros, and people tend to overestimate challenge or underestimate challenge. But we say in a truly want to say healthy, accurate, thoughtful change grid, we should rarely, if ever, see a 0 or a 12 being used. We've often said that whenever we see a 0 or a 12, we have to wonder, am what is what I am looking at basically the person's immediate emotional reaction to the activity that we ask them to rate? Or is 0 or 12 really an accurate assessment of someone's ability or challenge? And pretty much as a group, we said, nah, we don't really meet 12s or zeros. Everyone really is someplace in between. And so I thought, then I want to make sure that this um, outer border of life being lived doesn't put them into that kind of an extreme. I want them to be, look, I mean, they're coming through at 11 and a half. So it's not like I'm really robbing them of whatever their extreme perceptions might be. But yeah, that's why I think it's risky. It's risky. And maybe the only reason why it's risky is because I wonder if they've accurately assessed themselves. Because it may just be that if they stop for a moment and really answer it on a 1 to 11 scale, I might get something that's much healthier and much more useful than the 12s and the zeros. At least that was my logic at the time, and that's what I remember of my logic at the time. So open to any thoughts, comments about that. Anybody? Thoughts? All right. So with that, the next thing I wanted to go into is basically kind of like a review of what we've covered so far. Probably the best way for me to do that is to open up, oops, sorry, just put the whole world to sleep. Enjoy your nap, everyone. Come on, screen, cooperate. Okay. I want to go to our website and take a look at the, or rather to our YouTube channel and take a look at the list of things we've done. So with that, I'm going to here, YouTube. I'll put it into the display in just a second so you don't have to see all this craziness I'm going through. So our channel, and I'm going to go and look at all videos. There's a few I haven't released yet, so but that's all right because I want to go back as far as we can. Yeah, I was going to do this before I moved it because I didn't want people to get seasick. But we're going way back. That's over a year ago. These go back for probably 2 years, maybe getting close to 3 years worth of stuff we've been talking about. And the reason why I thought it'd be good for us to spend some time revisiting these is because I don't know that we've actually captured the essential learning that we gained from these discussions and integrated them to the change grade. So on our next call, I'm going to want to revisit each one of these ever so briefly just to figure out where they go. But for now, just for a little bit of fun, I wonder if you guys really realize all the stuff we've talked about. And just for the fun of it, recognize that every one of these purple boxes represents an hour of content that's up online. And so we spent a lot of time talking about neurotransmitters. 11 hours is what we spent talking about neurotransmitters. So I think that we've pulled that into our dialogue quite frequently since we first looked at this. But I think that that's really something to take a much closer look at. And now that I'm saying that I need to plug in my archive, I want to show you guys something else too. Okay. Now, after that, we talked a little bit about breathing and change. And if I remember correctly, it's because at that time, the people we had involved in the circle, this is when the pandemic was first getting underway. Nobody could really work or whatever. We were all up-grid. And so someone brought up the idea about that we need to take a breath. We need to do something to really manage our own tension in light of the pandemic and what it brought along with it before we attempt to go out there and help others. So I think we only talked about that for just a few sessions. Here you go. So 3 different sessions. In the middle of it, I threw up some building a career that matters, but we're just looking at the purples right now. Then we started talking about patterns of addiction on the change grid. And then we got into a longer series about emotions. So an hour on that. And you guys feel free to unmute and chime in, if you're kind of amazed that we actually look through all that. I put up the whole coach training program as far as the videos are concerned. Emotions was 2 parts. Then we did a separate one focusing on love. Where does love fit on the change grid? That was part 3. By the time we were done, we'd spent 7 sessions on emotions. Looks like we spent one completely on grief and one on love, but nevertheless, the emotions. Now, this is interesting because I think Boris Shags, who had the chat with the GPT, Boris, I think it was you.
That was me.
Yeah, so tell everyone about your decision to sit down with a cup of coffee and chat GPT.
Yeah, no, I just felt like it was a interesting experience to see what the AI sees out there as core emotions, right? So I just plugged in the 7 core emotions and then went at it, and it picked up some other information. It didn't actually connect directly to the 7 core emotions. It had a couple that I think 3 of them were off. And so I started asking it questions about these other emotions and were they considered core or primary emotions or not. And I sent T obviously the output of what it said. But as I'm playing with the AI tool, it's interesting how it works in the background. It's dated. So it only picks up information that's maybe 2 years prior.
Or older. Yeah, it's
prior.
absolutely true. Yep.
So it's not going to pick up anything relevant. But it's just an interesting experience to see what it does pick up and what it doesn't, how it responds.
Yeah, I find it very helpful, but the more I use it, the more I realize that it still needs someone to go in there and fine tune what's being pointed out and all those good sorts of things. I think it was last evening after I read your email, I decided to try it a little different way. And so I wrote a little query to to ChatGPT, and I said, anger, grief, fear, lust, apathy, pride, and shame are the 7 core human emotions. All other emotions are either variations on these 7 or the result of a combination of 2 or more of them. And then I said, create a narrative to prove my position. And it did. So I thought it was really interesting. But what was very interesting about it is that it said that I was not the only one to bring up those 7 emotions as being core emotions, that it's been talked about before by others. I didn't bother asking who, but
it must have been me.
Yeah, maybe. But I did think it was really interesting to see how does it handle when it's told something is true versus asked if something is true. So. And of course, I told it to build the case. I didn't ask if I was right or wrong, but it built a very strong case for what it was that I was saying. And I even said to it that based on the definitions of these 7 emotions, note that love is not listed. Which of these emotions then becomes the prerequisite for love, or combination of emotions become the prerequisite for love? And it immediately said pride. So I thought, like, okay, somehow or another, you can actually train this thing. But if I train it in false information presented as truth, by the way, I'm not saying though my 7 emotions is false. I believe completely in what I've taught you guys, that there are these 7 core emotions, and everything else is a variation on those themes or a combination of those. And I think a lot of the things that ChatGPT said were emotions aren't emotions anyway. They were something else that we could look into. But anyway, nevertheless, really interesting to pull ChatGPT into these kinds of explorations. But anyway, we spent 7 hours talking about emotions. And I know we have lots of diagrams, but I don't know if we said here, from the circle of brilliance, we need to move into the merging of brilliance. So what did we get in these 7 hours of discussions that we would like to say deserves to be formally added to the body of knowledge, training, skills, whatever that we currently consider ChangeWorks, tension management, et cetera, to be? What's the outcome of this? So I think that could be an interesting thing to look at. Then we got into relationship repair. Yes, if you'll remember, there was a time when the election didn't turn out how slightly less than half the country wanted to turn out. So there was a lot of bad feelings, you know. It's like, how do you go into repairing these relationships so that even though you're with someone who had the opposing viewpoint, opposing positions, how can you get back together? How can you make sure that that's there, you know, heal the fractures, if you will? And somehow in the middle of that, we decided we needed to talk about levels of detachment on the change grid. And that was probably because the best way for us to help people rebuild those relationships was by getting them to detach themselves from their own feelings and instead step into more of a facilitator kind of a role. By the way, you'll notice that some of these have received minimal views. We've never done anything to market this. I haven't even said to you guys yet, but I will, I promise you, say to you, I need every one of you to invite another professional to join you on Circle of Brilliance. I'd like this to become a bigger community. Obviously, I love all the people that have been participating, but it might be nice to have a few more people added to the mix. So I think they'll refer to these things, and certainly the hope by building such a large body of content on YouTube is that as we get into really marketing the site, that people will come back and start looking at these things. They'll be curious to go back into the more of the history of the videos that we've done and go from there. Yeah. Mapping goals. I don't even remember what that covered, but I imagine it covered where does goal setting happen on the change grid? How are different areas of the change grid lending themselves to different kinds of goals we might be going after? I'm sure at a certain point we talked about defining the goals more clearly, using our little matrix of what do I want, what do I not want, etc. Yep. And then, okay, we slapped in a whole bunch more building a career that matters. I still have about 75 of these to put out there, 75 hours of this stuff. Then we got into spiral dynamics for a good 6 hours. That was fascinating. We do make reference to that occasionally on our calls, but while I know the people who created Spiral Dynamics do have courses available in it, I don't think that this is something that any of us are going to go out there and sell. I'm just kind of curious to see if the spiral dynamic as described by these people would overlay on the change grid. And we were, I think, successful in showing how spiral dynamics could overlay on the change grid, particularly if we added a third dimension to it. Then we talked about situational leadership for a couple of sessions. Then curiosity and the change grid, 4 hours on where does curiosity live on the change grid? Here's laughter on the change grid. Then we got into sins and virtues for how many were these? 7? Is that right? Yeah, 7 of those. And then we talked about the 11 nations. I think Linda was revisiting a book she had read a couple years prior about how the United States can be divided up in a very different way than state lines and all that. So where's the Rust Belt? Where's the whatever the rest of the 11 happened to be? That was really very interesting. Untapped potential. Spent 4 hours talking about that. Where does that's more talking about downgrid locations. Mindfulness in the change grid, 4 hours on that. Competence on the change grid. Yeah. Where's mindful live? Where does competence live? Then we spent a lot of time talking about emotional intelligence, 7 hours on that. Pardon me. The next
take a month off just to watch all this.
Oh, I'm telling you, man, it's a lot of stuff. And I will also share with you, I'd love to look it up and show it to you guys real quick. Let me just do this for one quick moment. I don't think it's on my laptop, but before we started putting things up on Zoom, you guys know all of this was up on Vimeo. And we decided there's no reason for us to keep paying for Vimeo. And so I offloaded everything from Vimeo into a file folder that I thought I could go ahead and start uploading to the YouTube channel. So long before we started talking about neurotransmitters, the Circle had already been operating for, I believe it was the better part of a year. So let me just think where I put that. was basically things harvested from Vimeo. Yeah, chat amongst yourselves while I see if this is even real. But I'll just do a search for Vimeo. A name that contains Vimeo. Here it is, Vimeo Harvest. Let me just slide this.
Whoa.
So this is everything that I have. Now this is alphabetical. If I clicked into date modified, these are all videos that were up on Vimeo. There's 91 of these. So some of them aren't really our topics, but leveraging the oracle, the self, manipulation and shame shifting. We talked about that for 8 hours. The NLP meta model, we talked about that for, what is that, 4 hours. The art of caring detachment was an hour. Moving from intention to action was 6 hours. So if I scroll through this, there's a lot of really good material here that I would like to migrate over to the YouTube channel as well. So anyway, there's that. Like I don't have enough to do already. We got into set of
Well, it
sets.
takes about a minute to make the parameters for an upload on Studio. So
Well, right, exactly. And I just need to create the little
3
graphic.
hours. Yeah, that's 3
You know,
hours.
it's pretty easy. You just kind of slap it together.
One of those,
Where's
yeah.
where's the
Power
AI for that
application.
task?
I know I need to do something. I wish somebody else would do it.
Well, and I got plenty to do. So, but it's all here. I just didn't want it to vanish if I canceled Vimeo.
I thought there was an art AI T.
There is, but it only draws illustrations. It can't handle text.
Oh,
So I'm looking for one like if I asked, it's called Mid Journey. If I ask Mid Journey to create one of these thumbnails, it could give me the ratios. It could throw in a nice little picture. It can do all kinds of really great stuff. But if I say, and put the label emotional intelligence part 6 on there, it has no way of doing that.
oh well.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it does not handle text at all. But it's got a bunch of competitors as well. So maybe I need to go beyond Midjourney's popularity and just say, okay, who's really creating something that creates line art instead of illustrations? Yeah, because technically everything we do here, this is all line art. Yeah. Okay, anyway, we talked about emotional intelligence. Wait, am I past there? Mindfulness, yeah, competence, emotional intelligence, this set of sets. I think it was Brian who brought up that people have a mindset, a skill set, a tool set, and a heart set. Yeah, not that it matters who brought that to us, but that was brought to us. And so it was interesting.
Yeah, I think that was actually me, and Brian added the heart set.
Oh, okay, yeah. And so we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out, where does mindset, skill set, and tool set kind of reside on the change grid? Yeah. So again, it's good stuff. But if we don't even remember what we yammered on, and look at this, why did 85 people watch the first part, but only 6 watch the second part? Obviously, that's a marketing issue. We got to do something on our side of things to remind people that the recordings have been posted and here's the links and all that sort of
Better,
stuff.
better closings, T.
Well, it's the way that it is. And but boy, that all by itself is a task, a task, a task. But at least I captured it all. Managing emotions, conflict and harmony, tolerance. Oh, this is where we're looking at the learning module. I should go in there and change the titles, but we did how many on these? 5 hours on models of learning. Then we got into the master stream. I remember that. I think David, you and I talked about putting the master stream into it. Oh, and then Lynn and I went away somewhere, and for a couple of weeks, David kind of facilitated what the discussions were. Then we talked about the great resignation, and somehow we threw negativity, positivity in there as well. So it looks like there were 3 or 4 parts on resignation, and 6, 7, 8 hours of material on negativity versus positivity. Then finding joy. This is still a year ago. Did you realize we talked about this much stuff? So All y'all should have all the content you ever need to have just based from these discussions. But finding joy, lots of why did it take us 10 hours to find joy? But there you go. PowerPoint maneuvers, couple is there. Parenting, few there. Regret was a standalone. We talked about culture in an organization. Health span, that was probably a Brian thing for sure. Health span versus lifespan. We talked about flow, finding your authentic voice, the Likert layer. Remember, we did several hours trying to figure out if we divided it into a 5-point Likert scale, how might that change our readings, life transitions, merging cultures. Merging cultures was interesting. That was 5 hours. And I remember that was the one that says, where are people going to feel marginalized? Where are they going to feel, I forget what the other parameters were, but we've got the slides to show all of this. Enneagrams, we spent a good chunk of time on those, biases and fallacies, where attachment is, the collusion spectrum, elections. Then I started doing some of the Oracle self, and that's where I need to continue the upload of all these videos. So anyway, I just wanted to hopefully let you guys get impressed with yourselves about the range of things that you've participated in discussing and over the time, and where we might want to go next with all this. So thoughts, comments?
Wow.
Yeah, wow, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind
Pretty
of
amazing.
well, it
Yeah.
really is, and I would like to think that with this body of content already collected and posted, you guys should be able to say in your own marketing literature that you are an active member of the Circle of Brilliance, and the Circle of Brilliance, in turn, goes to the merging of brilliance. How do we integrate those things in a more formal, official way, just in the instead of just the kind of conversational sort of way that we've done it up to now? So yeah, I mean, you should be able to put that out there, and hopefully, as we open up the doors and say, let's see if we can invite a few more professionals to join us on this, they can see we're not just getting started. We've been doing a great deal for a long time,
Yes.
and yeah. So I think the challenge about getting more people onto the circle is that they may initially feel as though they don't have an understanding about tension management or the change grid, so they might be missing a lot. But I'd like to make sure that everyone knows that, okay, like for example, I don't mind sharing this. Boris, tell everybody how much formal training you've gone through in the world of tension management.
0.
Zero. So yeah, but we've been talking so much about it, and I was chatting with Boris very early on about the work that we do and the work that he does, and he had a change great experience and all that. But I'd like to say that by this stage of Boris's participation, even though he's not completed any formal training, by the way, Boris, all the recordings are right here. You feel free to go through that training. But I gotta believe you're not confused very often at all by what we're talking about, unless we bring up some new obscure thing we haven't talked about forever.
Not
Right?
not at all. I think the first thing is you have to have a desire to really understand the stuff.
Yeah.
And if they show up with that level of curiosity, they'll spend some time like I did probably watching some of these videos. I have
Yeah.
looked at a few of these in the past, but I've been able to catch on pretty easily, I think.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And again, I think one of the reasons why it's easy to catch on to is because, as I've said all along, I didn't invent this. I just kind of created like a more formal way of approaching the subject matter and learning the subject matter. But nature created tension and tension management. So I would like to think that once people kind of they click with it, that it becomes even easier for them to understand the kinds of things that we're talking about. So yeah. All right. So with that, I would like to revisit some of these. Obviously, it's a daunting task. I think we're going to go through all of them, but I would appreciate it if you guys would come to our YouTube channel, click on the videos, and then just kind of scroll through it and say, what did we walk away from that? Let's take a closer look at that. Like the Enneagrams, we certainly talked about it. I don't know that we ever said this is where each one of the 9 types on the Enneagram would overlay.
T underneath YouTube, what's in the search line that gets us here?
Yeah, if you go to the YouTube channel, type in Change Works System, and this one will pop up. If you just
Sure.
type in ChangeWorks, then you end up with a lot of other people's stuff. Like, I don't know who this is, but I'm not worried. They have 109 subscribers, and who am I to talk? We've got 89. And you have the ChangeWorks Institute. I don't know who Jim Kelly is. He's a certified trainer of ChangeWorks coaching. What's ChangeWorks coaching? Do I not know this guy? What's the ChangeWorks Institute? So part of me wants to click there and just say, who are you with your one subscriber? And what are you talking about? But if he's got one subscriber and these videos go back 7 years ago, is anyone worried? I'm thinking no.
I
So
guess nothing to worry about.
yeah, you look through these. ChangeWorks Hypnosis with 3 subscribers. Howard Cooper's Rapid ChangeWorks. He has about almost, so he's not even monetized yet. You have to have 1,000.
I remember when I was struggling with anxiety, being told
Oh,
to
you're not
just
even from around here. So I get that. Okay, you guys know you have to have 1,000 subscribers before you even qualify for monetization. And so he's been doing these pretty recently, 9 days ago, a year ago. He's not posting videos very frequently. 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 11 months ago. So in the past year, he's done 4 videos. You're not building anything at all, if that's all you're putting up. But these aren't bad. I think some of these could be curious. I'm more interested in reaching out to him to get him to be more involved with the circle. And then ultimately understand what we mean by, we mean by ChangeWorks. Than that. But my point is, to David, your question, type in ChangeWorks system.
Yep.
And it automatically just brings us up. Then people don't have to be digging around for it. But if they do just type in ChangeWorks, yeah, I don't think they're concerned about ChangeWorks recycling. Okay. I think they'll get us. Tell them it's the purple one. It's the purple one. And that should bring them there. Yeah, I don't know who the rest of these people are. Oh, this is very interesting. Quick change magic. Have you guys seen those performances where the individual can literally change their outfit in milliseconds?
I went to a show of a guy called Ennio, who is the paper cartoon artist. And he did 60 characters in an hour, all paper costumes that he puts on himself.
Is that crazy? I mean, that's amazing. Well, it's kind of like, how do they make these outfits so that it can all form over there? But bottom line, we don't really need to create too much of a problem. What is this? Oh, ChangeWorks case study is for biofuel research from 11 years ago. All right, I'm not worried about these people. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and finish up for today. And next week, maybe we can, one of you guys will tell me which of the deeper dives you'd like us to do. So again, ChangeWorks system, click on videos. If you've not already subscribed, please do so. Any video you look at, make sure you click on the like button. Those things really do matter when it comes time for us to go after monetization. Okay, all right. Any thoughts, comments before we're done?
Nope, cool, T. Thanks.
Good. And yeah, Shax, thanks for sending that link over. I am curious to check out the living paper cartoon. He sounds really, really interesting.
It was fun. It really was fun.
Yeah, I'll check it out as soon as we're done. All right, thanks everybody. Take care. Bye for now.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.